we'll get started. The session will be somewhere between half an hour and 35 minutes long. It's a mixture of a discussion of how we've introduced mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, or meditation, more commonly known as, into Dubai College. How we're planning to roll that out further. So it's a sort of a practical application of the things that we've been talking about today. It will be a discussion for some of the cynics among you as to the sort of scientific backing behind why you may or may not want to be engaged in something like mindfulness. And then we're going to sit down in a relaxed and casual fashion and contemplate a raisin. Some of you may have done that before. And then after we've contemplated and eaten our raisin, we are then going to do just a very simple 8 minutes mindfulness-based meditation. So that's roughly the plan of the session. So I'm Mike Lambert, I'm the headmaster of Dubai College, but only since September of this year. Last year, and for the last 3 years, I was head of sixth form at Dubai College as well. And it was actually in the sixth form that we embedded this mindfulness-based cognitive therapy. So we began to hear the same trends that everybody else has been talking about today. Increased pressure on hitting those PISA and TIMSS scores. In our case, getting a maximum number of A stars at GCSE, getting those A's, going off to the top universities. And quite often this was not the pressure that we put on the students as a school. It was actually a whole bunch of very highly achieving students together in a school putting pressure on one another to achieve very highly. We read about it in the press quite a lot last year in the UK, that the levels of stress have gone sky high. And so we thought we need to do something about this. And again, a bit like Anthony Selden was saying, if there's one person that can do it, it's us as educators. So we thought, what's a really simple, practical, pragmatic way to embed some kind of stress relief into the sixth formers, particularly daily life, because that's the time when they're doing all of these US and UK applications and A-levels and all the rest of it. So we're actually really lucky, and I don't know how your school days are structured, but basically we teach 2 periods, we break, we teach another 2 periods, and then we have something that we call the 12 o'clock slot. And it's a 40-minute non-lesson during our school day. So from 12 to 12:40, in the run-up to the lunch hour, we don't do anything specifically. So some people will do Islamic studies, some people will do prep, but in the sixth form we have the luxury of it not being sort of Islamic studies or prep, and the Islamic studies is taught elsewhere. So we literally have these 4 40-minute periods in a week in which we can do whatever we want to produce this enriching curriculum. So we run something called Home Alone, and Home Alone is sort of a life skills preparation program in which we're teaching our sixth form students to get ready to live at home alone, wherever that is in the world, the US or the UK typically for our leaders, and also to manage the stresses and strains. And we run a 10-week program for year 12, so year 12 you probably all use the same nomenclature, and then we have another 10 sessions for year 13. So actually during the course of 2 years they do 20 different life lessons. And one of those life lessons that we do is mindfulness. So we sit down with them for 40 minutes and explain what mindfulness is all about. So the practical bit of this is this book. So this is the book. Basically this is going to be like a book club. I'm going to talk you through this book, I'm going to read some bits from this book to you, we're going to do one of the meditations from the book, but this is it. So you don't have to be an expert, I have no training, you can become an MBCT practitioner or coach or counsellor if that's what you want to do, but equally you can do it all yourself. So this book, Mindfulness, a practical guide to finding peace in a frantic world, written by a couple of guys called Mark Williams and Danny Penman. Now there's now an institute at the University of Oxford, which is a mindfulness institute. So, so much money and scientific backing is behind mindfulness that they've actually created a separate institute for wellbeing and mindfulness at the University of Oxford. So these guys work there. This is the program they've devised. It's an 8-week program. And I'm just going to read you some of the stats from this book.
Excuse me?
Yeah.
Is this only for the year 12 and year 13?
You could do this with whoever you want. It's just we started it with our year 12 and 13. You can do primary. It works just as well. You'll see it in a minute with the raisins. But this is the book, the guide. We just happen to do it in our sixth form, yeah?
Okay.
So just think of the benefits. Let me just read from this book for you. Numerous psychological studies have shown that regular meditators are happier and more contented than average. and there's a whole bunch of footnotes at the back to tell you what scales they're judging happiness and contentment on. These are not just important results in themselves, but have huge medical significance. As such, positive emotions are linked to a longer and healthier life. So some of the stats. Anxiety, depression, and irritability all decrease with regular sessions of meditation. Memory also improves. Reaction times become faster, and mental and physical stamina increase. And there are the studies in the back of this that you can refer to if you want that scientific evidence. Regular meditators enjoy better and more fulfilling relationships. Studies worldwide have found that meditation reduces the key indicators of chronic stress, including hypertension. Meditation has also been found to be effective in reducing the impact of serious conditions such as chronic pain and cancer, and can even help to relieve drug and alcohol dependence. Studies have now shown that meditation bolsters the immune system and thus helps to fight off colds, flu, and other diseases. So that's just some of the stats. Usually where I start with the 6 games in our 40-minute sessions, however, is with this. Unhappiness, stress, and depression. So a joyful place to begin. Depression is taking a staggering toll on the modern world. Around 10% of the population, so if you think, I don't know how many we've got in this room, about 50, so 5 of you, around 10% of the population can expect to become clinically depressed over the coming year. And things are likely to become worse. The World Health Organization estimates that depression will impose the second biggest health burden globally by 2020. Think about that for a moment. Depression will impose a bigger burden than heart disease, arthritis, and many forms of cancer on both individuals and society in less than 5 years. Okay? And it's our kids in the schools, both primary and secondary level, that are these stats, and that's the worrying thing. So that's why we're doing it. Depression used to be an illness of the late middle-aged. Now it strikes most people first when they're in their mid-20s, and a substantial number of people suffer their first bout in their teens. It can also persist, with around 15 to 39% of sufferers still depressed after 1 year. Around a fifth remain depressed for 2 or more years, and this is the definition of chronic depression. But the scariest thing of all is that depression tends to return. If you've been depressed once, there's a 50% chance of a recurrence, even if you've made a full recovery. Depression may be exacting a staggering toll, but its cousin, chronic anxiety, is becoming disturbingly common too, with average levels of anxiety in children and young people now at a point that would have been judged to be clinical in the 1950s. So our students at school, at primary and secondary level, when they talk about their levels of anxiety, that we just think, well, that's modern life. Back in the 1950s, they'd have been diagnosed with chronic anxiety. It's become so normalized to feel anxious. That is also why we're trying to do something about it. But this book, it's got all the stats, it's brilliant, just buy it. You can dip into it, you can pull the bits out that you want, you can make it as powerful and hard-hitting as you want, depending on how old or young your students are. So like you were saying, primary school, maybe a little bit too much, but you're adults, so I can kind of share this with you. But you can pick and choose whatever you want. It's also got a whole bunch of very, very practical meditations in here, from the 1-minute meditation, through the raisin meditation that we'll do in a minute, through to an 8-minute mindfulness of body and breath, which we will also do together, which will be slightly weird and awkward, but you'll have to go over it. But if you're thinking, hang on a sec, how do we get this into the school day? So Selden, they used to do mindfulness meditation during the course of their school day. You could do a mindful minute. That's all it takes for meditation, is to have 1 minute. And I'm sure all of us within the school day, somewhere, at some point, can get everybody together or do it in a distributed fashion for 1 minute during the course of a school day. But you just got to teach the skill first. So this year, how are we doing it? Practically, we have lower, middle, and sixth form assemblies on a weekly basis on different days of the week. So this year, I'm going into the lower school assembly, and I will do a meditation with 250 students. Then I'll do the middle school, then I'll do the senior school. But once you've got the skill, that's it. It's not rocket science. You don't have to pay somebody to do this. You just have to learn how to do it, and then you can replicate it whenever it is that you want to be able to do it. So we'll come back onto practical meditation in a minute. I'm just going to talk to you a little bit then about awareness and the things that you should be aware of. So the premise of meditation is that you spend most of your time in a state where you are anticipating the future or you are ruminating on the past. So after this session, you'll leave. You're like, oh, hang on a sec, I've got another meeting, I've got to go back to school. And tonight, blimey, I didn't pick up the spaghetti bolognese for supper, so I really need to pop into Choitrums to buy that on my way home. And when I get home, I must remember to put the oven on, because otherwise the garlic bread won't be cooked. Maybe that's just me, but that's literally what's going through my head. And that's now. So I'm sitting here in the now, but I'm not living now. I'm just worrying about my spaghetti and my garlic bread and putting the oven on. So I'm actually, in the now, living in the future. I've also got my reports to write. I've got a whole school action plan that the KHD asked me for yesterday. I still haven't written it. I promised them by the end of the week. That's going on in my head. So I've got all these things that I'm thinking about in the now. But I'm not actually enjoying the fact that I'm sitting in front of 50 people talking to them about this amazing thing called meditation. So I need to do that. Now, just slow down. Stop thinking about the future. Equally, if I do sit for a while and start listening to my thoughts, quite a lot of those thoughts will be to do with things that have happened. I didn't really manage the conversation that I had yesterday with the two imams who teach Islamic studies in my school very well, to be honest. And I know that. It's been weighing on my mind. So I'm thinking about it again now. So I've stopped and I've slowed down. That was the first thought that came to my head. So I'm worrying about tonight's supper. I'm worrying about what happened yesterday. I'm still forgetting the fact that 50 of you are looking at me now and expecting me to say something meaningful about meditation. So you've got to bring yourself back to the present moment. And that's the premise of mindfulness, that it's present moment awareness. So how do you stop that horrible thing of anticipating the future and worrying about the past? And it's not all bad, because some memories are great and you want to sit there for ages remembering the great thing that you did. And sometimes you're really excited about the holiday that's coming up. We're not talking about getting rid of those thoughts. We're talking about gaining control when you have anxious thoughts about the future or slightly depressing thoughts about the past. Those are the ones you want to get rid of. There's a very, 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 very simple tool that you can use to do that. And it is mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, which is basically meditation of the breath. So it's completely secular, it's non-denominational. It shouldn't offend anybody, whichever type of school it is that you teach in, and whatever the religious denominations of students in your school, you can teach this and nobody will be offended, hopefully, because the only thing to be offended about is breathing. So how does it work? You sit here and you focus on your septum. So that funny gap thing between your two nostrils, your septum. So it's going to be a lot of breathiness going on in the room. So you've got to feel your breath coming in and out of your nose. So we'll just practice for a second. So breathe in through your nose, breathe out through your nose, but just focus on the feeling that you can feel here, that bit of the septum. Okay, now, some of you are looking at me slightly strangely, that's fine. Some of you are still thinking about spaghetti bolognese or the meeting you had with the imams. Every time that happens, pull it back to the feeling. That's what you've got to do. It's about gaining control of your thoughts. Every time it wanders off to the future, back to the past, bring it back to the nose. Some of you might be finding that relatively challenging. Some of you have probably got incredibly disobedient minds who, irrespective of the fact that you're desperately trying to focus on the breath, whatever you do, it's going one way or the other, and you've got to bring it back. It's hard. It's really, really hard. And if you can sustain that for 5 minutes, it probably means you've been doing this for 2 months consistently. To get to the point at which you can focus on your breath without your mind wandering one way or the other, it takes about 2 months of practice. To get 5 minutes of peace, how awful is that? The world we live in. It takes 2 months of practice to get 5 minutes of peace, but it's the truth. Okay, so that's the basic premise. Now, the Buddhists used to talk about mental rising and mental sinking. So if you know anything about Buddhist meditation, similar principle. You focus on the breath, or you focus on the candle, you focus single pointedly on something else. Now, mental rising is when they counted both anticipation of the future and thoughts about the past as mental rising. It means your brain's becoming agitated. Mental sinking, and this is the thing that might happen to a few of you in a minute. It's quite warm in here, you've had a nice bit of lunch, you're going to eat a raisin in a second. You're going to get the mental sinking, and that is starting to fall asleep. Okay, that's the other thing that you've got to be very, very wary of. So you've got all of these things that you're trying to control in your head, the way you do it, the breath. So if you're sitting there in a minute, which we will be, and you start nodding off, just sit up in a purposeful position and bring your attention back to the breath. And again, if it wanders off in your thought, bring it back to the breath. So that is the core tool of what we're going to be looking at. Again, it's so easy and quite good fun to do with students, whether they are 5 or 6 years old, or 17 or 18 years old. Everybody gets something out of it. It's really challenging. I did a session with 25 kids between the ages of 4 and 14 this summer as part of a homeschooling group in the UK, and we did it in a park. It's the hardest thing ever. You've got people playing football and frisbee. There's a bloke with the tree strimmer shaving down the bush. I've got like these kids between 4 and 14 all trying to meditate. And it was absolutely brilliant. We had the most peaceful corner of the park, and it is possible, whatever the age, and you can mix them up to do something. So that's the tool. The other thing then, the reason that you're holding raisins, is that you can practice mindfulness in whatever you do. Now, Thich Nhat Hanh, who is a famous Buddhist philosopher, talks about the mindfulness of washing up. Now, we're going to do the mindfulness of raisin consumption. You guys can get us some raisins. I know you've done this before, but please help yourself. Is anybody else lacking raisins? Okay. So, we are going to eat a raisin, and again, this is great for primary level. We're going to eat a raisin in a way that most of you will never have eaten a raisin before in your life. Okay? And that is mindfully. So how many of you are regular raisin eaters? Not very many, okay? Imagine, okay, how many of you eat Maltesers or minstrels or other chocolate-flavored items? Okay, whatever the thing is that you normally shove your hand in the bag for and pull it out and thrust it in your mouth, whether that's raisins or minstrels or Maltesers or dates or crisps, that's the thing that you could do the mindfulness thing with. Okay? Because normally you just take a handful, you whack it in, you crunch it up, you're thinking about something else, and you move on. You never really, really, really enjoy your crisp, your raisin, your minstrel, your Malteser in the moment. And that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to, again, it's in here, so you can have it. It's not just me making it up. So I'm going to read you the raisin meditation. So take your raisin. Take one of the raisins and hold it in the palm of your hand, or between your fingers and thumb. Focusing on it, approach it as if you have never seen anything like it before. Can you feel the weight of the raisin, either between your fingers or in your hand? Can you see the light on the raisin, the ridges of the raisin, the shadow of the light cast across the raisin? Take the time really to see the raisin. Imagine you've never seen one before. Look at it with great care and full attention. Let your eyes explore every part of it. Examine the highlights where the light shines, the darker hollows, the folds and ridges. Turn the raisin over between your fingers. Squeeze it between your forefinger and your thumb. How does it feel? Now, holding it beneath your nose, see what you notice with each in-breath. Does it have a scent? Let it fill your awareness. And if there is no scent, or very little, notice that as well. Slowly take the raisin to your mouth and notice how how your hand and arm know exactly where to put it. And then gently place it in your mouth, noticing what the tongue does to receive it, without chewing. Simply explore the sensations of having it on your tongue. Gradually begin to explore the raisin with your tongue. For about 20 seconds, roll it around your mouth. If you've eaten that one, have another one. Now, when you're ready, consciously, actively, take a bite into the raisin. And again, notice the feeling. Notice the effect of your teeth and the raisin in your mouth. Notice any tastes it releases. Feel the texture as your teeth bite into it. Continue slowly chewing it, but don't swallow it just yet. Notice what's happening in your mouth. Okay, see if you can detect the first intention to swallow as it arises in your mind. The body's wanting to do it. Experience it with full awareness before you actually do it. Notice what the tongue does to prepare for it. See if you can follow the sensations of swallowing the raisin. If you can, consciously sense it as it moves down into your stomach. If you don't swallow it all in one go, consciously notice a second or even a third swallow until it's all gone. Notice what the tongue does after you swallow. Finally, spend a few moments registering the aftermath of the raisin. Is there an aftertaste? What does the absence of the raisin now feel like? Is there an automatic tendency to look for the next raisin to put in your mouth? Then it goes on, and you can write it down and what your sensations are. But think about it. Think about doing this with your students, okay? It's quite easy, it's quite good fun, it's enjoyable, it gives them a minute, 2 minutes out of their day. But, and it may be simple, you might have heard about it, back in the UK this summer, there are now cafes that are open up where you can go and do colouring. So you can eat a raisin, you can do your washing up. One of these hipster cafes in Shoreditch in London, you now go along and they have, like when you were a kid, they have outlines of a picture of a puppy and they have a pot of colouring pencils. And all you do is you go in and you get your cup of tea or your cup of coffee and you sit down and you take out a colouring pencil and you just colour in your outline picture of the dog. But the focus that you give to colouring, which is what you do as a child, is actually mindfulness in action. So if you're thinking of another way of doing this with primary school students, get them to colour in for 5 minutes. What a brilliant way to de-stress them at the start of a lesson. You could be practicing mindfulness in the classroom without them even knowing it, depending on which level you're actually at. So that's a little bit about the practicalities, different ways of doing it. I'm aware that it's already 8 minutes to 3 and we're due to finish at 3. So I now have an 8-minute meditation, assuming I can get the computer to come back on. And this guy, his tone is much, much better than my tone of voice. So I have no idea whose Shrees it is. Always past me. Okay. In which case, got me. I think it's Danny Penn that reads it on the CD, and that's the great thing. If you're not happy about standing up and delivering this yourself, you don't feel confident in your own practice of mindfulness, then just whack on the CD, and this guy does it really well. And he does it with perfect timing. It'll be less good than my timing. So, mindfulness, body and breath. You're going to have to adjust yourselves. Sure. Hello.
Would you like to help?
No, could you close the door?
I do.
Okay, that's fine. Don't worry, I'll go for it. Thank you. Okay. Settle into a comfortable position, either lying on a mat or a thick rug, or sitting on a chair, cushion, or meditation stool. If you use a chair, it's best to use a firm, straight-back chair rather than an armchair, so you can sit away from the back of the chair and the spine can be self-supported. If you sit on a cushion on the floor, it's helpful if your knees actually touch the floor, although that may not happen at the beginning. Feel free to experiment with the height of cushions or stool until you feel comfortable and firmly supported. If you have a disability, that means sitting in this way or lying on your back is uncomfortable, find a posture that is comfortable. If sitting, allow your back to adopt an erect, dignified posture, neither stiff nor tensed up, but comfortable. If sitting on a chair, have your feet flat on the floor with your legs uncrossed. Allow your eyes to close if that feels comfortable. If not, lower your gaze so it falls unfocused a few feet in front of you. Bring your awareness to physical sensations by focusing your attention on the sensations of touch in the body where it's in contact with the floor and whatever you're sitting or lying. Spend a few moments exploring these sensations of touch. Now focusing your attention on your feet, starting with the toes. Expand the spotlight of attention so it takes in the soles of your feet, the heels and the top of your feet, until you're attending to any and all of the physical sensations you become aware of in both feet, moment by moment. Spend a few moments attending to the feet in this way, noticing how sensations arise and dissolve in awareness. If there are no sensations in this region of the body, simply register a blank. This is perfectly fine. I'm not trying to make sensations happen. You're simply registering what is already here when you attend to it. Now expand your attention to take in the rest of both legs for a few moments. Then the torso, the pelvis and hips, up to the shoulders. Then the left arm, then the right arm, then the neck and head. Spend a minute or two resting in the awareness of the whole body. See if it's possible to allow your body and its sensations to be just as you find them. Explore how it is to let go of the tendency to want things to be a certain way. Even one brief moment of seeing how things are, without wanting to change anything, can be profoundly nourishing. Now bring your attention to the breath as it moves in and out of the body at the abdomen. Notice the changing patterns of physical sensations in this region of the body as the breath moves in and out. It may help to place your hand here for a few breaths. Feel the abdomen rising and falling. You may notice mild sensations of stretching as the abdomen gently rises with each in-breath, and different sensations as the abdomen falls with each out-breath. As best you can, follow closely with your attention. You notice changing physical sensations for the full duration of each in-breath and the full duration of each out-breath. Perhaps noticing the slight pauses between one in-breath and the following out-breath, and between one out-breath and the following in-breath. There is no need to try to control your breathing in any way at all. Simply let the breath breathe itself. Sooner or later, usually sooner, your attention will wander away from the breath. You may find thoughts, images, plans, or daydreams coming up. Such mind wandering is not a mistake. It's simply what minds do. When you notice that your awareness is no longer on the breath, you might congratulate yourself. You've already woken up enough to know it. Once more aware of your experience in this moment. Simply acknowledge where the mind has wandered to, and gently escort your attention back to the sensations in your abdomen. The mind will likely wander over and over again. So each time, remember that the aim is simply to note where the mind has been, and gently escort your attention back to the breath. This can be very difficult, as you may find it frustrating that the mind seems so disobedient. Such frustration can create a lot of extra noise in the mind. So no matter how many times your mind wanders, allow yourself on each occasion, without limit, to cultivate compassion for your mind as you bring it back to where you had intended it to be. See if it's possible to view the repeated wanderings of the mind as opportunities to nurture greater patience within yourself. In time, you may discover this quality of kindness towards the wandering mind brings a sense of compassion towards other aspects of your experience. The wandering mind has been a great ally in your practice, and not the enemy you supposed it to be. Continue with this practice now for approximately 1 to 2 minutes. Okay. So in essence, that is MBCT, mindfulness-based cognitive therapy. It's very straightforward, it's very easy. I personally think it's very engaging. I'm just going to leave you with one little bit of science before I send you on your way. So what was happening in your brain during those 8 minutes that you just did mindfulness? Why do you do it? Why does it raise your feelings of well-being? Scientific research using brain imaging has shown that the insula becomes energized through meditation. This is hugely significant because this part of the brain is integral to our sense of human connectedness, as it helps to mediate empathy in a very real and visceral way. Empathy allows you to see into another's soul, as it were, helping you to understand their predicament from the inside. With it comes true compassion, true loving kindness. If you looked inside your brain using a scanner, you would see this area buzz with life when you are feeling empathy for another person. Meditation not only strengthens this area, but also helps it to grow and expand. But why is this important? Apart from being good for society, all of humanity, empathy is good for you. Empathy, feeling genuine compassion and loving kindness towards yourself and others, have hugely beneficial effects on health and well-being. The longer a person has meditated, the more highly developed is the insula. But even 8 weeks of mindfulness training is sufficient to show changes in the way in which this critical area of the brain functions. That's mindfulness. Buy the book. It's dead straightforward. Hope you enjoyed the session. Safe journey.